Forbes Books presents The Great Digital Transformation with Gerard Szatvanyi, highlighting the pioneers that reimagined possibilities and reimagined businesses. I'm Joe Pardavila, and welcome back to our Digitization versus Digital Transformation Roundtable. Once again, Gerry and I are joined by OSF Executive Managing Director Bernardine Wu and Rob Smith, the AVP of Go-to-Market at OSF. We pick things up as we discuss the future of digital transformation across different industries. And let's talk about some of these industries. So healthcare was one I wanted to get into, is the fact that they're slow to react because they don't want anyone changing their system, especially here in the United States. We've got a mess of a healthcare system with insurance, so nobody wants to fix it. So I can sort of see that sort of encapsulates why the healthcare is like.
That's not US centric. That's because this is how people and government are in most countries. It's a human problem. It's not that much of a country problem. Is that humans, I believe they are resistant to change, but with the right leadership, I think change can be done and change can move forward. This is not impossible, but you need to have the right leadership in order to get there.
I think if you look at some parallels to different industries, you can see how this can happen. So if you look at the electric car industry, the juggernauts of the car industry, automotive industry, very, very slow to react to electric and building electric platforms, proper ones. But then you get a relative upstart in the form of Tesla, who build a fully electric car with a great range, great acceleration, all this stuff. It's the safest car in America when it gets released, right? How do they do that? How did they leapfrog so far forward? And now everyone is catching up. They're constantly trying to catch up. I think it needs someone or several people like that in the healthcare space to all of a sudden turn it on its head, and everyone starts to go, oh, that's interesting. We need to catch up now. So as an example, in the UK, we do have virtual doctor appointments, right? Service called Doctor Anywhere. And the private healthcare companies have all of a sudden realized, oh, that's cheaper. That's cheaper for us to actually pay those doctors, normal doctors, for their time, a little bit of money, instead of having to arrange expensive appointments with physicians on premise in hospitals. And so all of a sudden, that's a big part of their service that they're pushing. And then the hospitals then have to change very quickly to adapt to that. It rolls very quickly, but you need these disruptors. And sometimes disruption is hard from within.
And Bernadine, we touched on retail. Retail is one of those industries that they got on board because they were going to get on board or they were going to die. So talk to me how retail has sort of embraced digital transformation even before the pandemic.
Well, retail is always the closest to the consumer. And so, as I said, the consumer is often pushing the envelope, pushing that, they may be on their way to a moonshot and not even knowing it. So I think retail tends to be a little bit farther ahead. But even within the retail industry, what did you say? It's distributed unevenly.
Future is
even within the retail industry, different companies, different brands, based on leadership, based on where they are, can vary. Generally, the soft goods space was ahead of the hard goods space. So fashion, apparel, accessories tended to be more innovative earlier on than the hard goods space. You've got, hard good companies that are used to selling through, let's say Home Depot or a Lowe's in the US or through a, supermarket in whatever country. So they were a little bit farther behind. COVID actually supercharged the grocery part of retail, right? They were actually laggards before, and then suddenly, of course, everybody had to shop online, get delivery, curbside pickup, reserving and picking up. So sometimes, there's always a carrot and a stick. Just depends on which one you have at that given time. But of course, we encourage everyone to not wait for the carrot and the stick, and to create the carrot and the sticks. And maybe that is creating a carrot for consumer behavior, or as you guys said before, internally within your team, how do you get your employees or your staff to think differently? Sometimes it's a carrot and sometimes it's a stick.
I found myself just last week in a grocery, and I was thinking to myself, why am I in a grocery? Why am I not ordering online? Unbelievable how habit sometimes it's even after COVID and everything. It's like, man, I can't believe I'm actually walking into a grocery when I I didn't buy anything that is, it would require me to actually check things out. I could have just order online and not go there.
I will say, Gerry, it's okay for you to leave the house. It's all right. You're good. If you want to go out, it's okay.
Leave the house to be in a great place like this.
Right, true.
More enjoyable, right? It's not that I don't like the grocery
okay.
thing, but still, you know, like you can do better, obviously.
Yeah.
Like you said before, it's a mix, right? So I'm one of those. I've got to touch and feel what I'm buying, or what I'm, especially for, you know, apparel or fashion. But maybe I want to do some research before I go into the store, or as I'm in the store, I want to take a picture of the things that I think I want, and then go home and think about it, and very easily find that, you know, use image recognition to find that product. Oh, and maybe this one I actually have 3 choices in 3 different retailers, or 3 different colors, or something like that, and give me choices. So it is, as you said, it's that intermix of, you know, online, offline, social, and mobile that we have to pull together and enable.
It still comes back to the customer as well, right? So you got to think what you as a customer or typical customers will want. In your example, the ideal is that on your phone, it tells you, well, it's in this part of the store. It's down there on the left of that aisle, so that you can go and get it quickly and all that kind of stuff. And actually, while you're there, it goes quite well with this, and they're over there.
And the store associate knows that I'm coming and actually has helped me. Yeah,
because you're a frequent purchaser, you've got the history, you've got all that kind of stuff. So they give you, I don't know, a free gift or something. You know what I mean? There's just so much that can be explored that is straightforward, quite frankly. And you've got companies like IKEA that are doing this quite well. You can check store stock, you can it tells you what aisle it's in and where to go and all that kind of thing. Because some people love going to IKEA, if you know the store that well, to browse through all the room sets and kind of get inspiration. That's my wife, right? We don't go to IKEA without going through the entire...
Well, IKEA traps you, Rob. As you know, you have to go in their path.
I am a hunter, because when I go to IKEA, I'm like, I want 4 photo frames. They're right there. I'm going in the bottom. I'm not going through all that nonsense. And I'm going to get them and I'm going to go, right? Different types of consumers, right? So,
yeah, Bernardine, so what you said earlier about how you interact with the shop and the shopping experience, and it can be very different. Like for a man, for example, buying a shirt, it's not the same as for a woman. Like a woman will want every time a different type of shirt in different whatever. For a man, you pick one that you really like wearing, you want to buy 10 of the same items, and you want every month the store to send you one right home, because you don't want to go through the hassle of, you know, buying and going to the store and trying out a new one, a different one. And I like that one. That's the one that I want you to give me. Today, many brands, they don't even know how you're buying and what is your buying pattern. It's like, sometimes it's like, I want to buy this model again, but we don't make it anymore. Like, why not?
And this is the holy grail, right? Because we can make generalizations about, you know, this kind of person will always be a soccer mom. This kind of person will always be likes to go into the store and spend a lot of time. But actually, it could be the same person, just different times. Sometimes she's in a rush. I need to look on my phone while I'm driving, carefully, of course, and before I go into the store, because I want to know exactly where that thing is in the store. But at other times, I do want to take my time. So it's what we're after is that one-on-one personalization, you know, that personalized experience for the consumer to serve her need at that time, in that place, you know, in her mindset.
A great example of that is airports, right? We've worked a fair bit with airports, especially Gatwick Airport, and one consumer, just me, say, can be a completely different persona depending on what I'm doing, depending on my context. So if I'm taking my family through the airport, going on holiday, and I'm checking in bags, and I need, you know, make sure the kids are fed, and I need toilets close and whatever. Completely different to business traveler Rob, right? Business traveler Rob is about supreme efficiency and a lack of talking to anybody at any time. You know, it's kind of like shooting through the airport, minimum amount of time in the airport. Whereas family Rob is kind of like, I'm going to take more time. We're going to get through the gate.
Just
we're going to have some food. I don't want it to be rushed at all. I don't want any stress, you know. But I'm the same person. How do they figure that out? And that's what we help with a lot of the tools.
I can't believe that you just said lack of talking.
Lack of talking through the airport.
Able to actually do that?
Yeah. I just got
my business.
Put my headphones on, right?
Yeah.
No, Rob is a very social person, so it's I cannot imagine him not to interact, not to want to talk to anybody.
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, Rob, let's go through some positive outcomes, OSF Digital clients, if you don't mind. Name some of the industries or companies you've worked with that you've brought these positive outcomes for.
Well, it's a really big question because there are just so many companies that we've helped over time. I think the grocery space is one that we've been particularly successful in recently in lots of different countries in Europe and also over in the Americas and those kind of areas, because it's a really difficult industry. You have orders that can be edited all the way through. You've got substitutions that can happen right at the point of delivery. You've got to know about stock in 5 days, not today, because that's when you're going to pick that order and dispatch it to the customer. We've produced a lot of great solutions around grocery. So we've done a lot of work there. We've spent a lot of time in fashion and apparel and just general retail. So we've been constantly pushing people forward, mainly with a focus on large kind of store estates where we can connect the customer journey, enable click and collect, enable kind of buy online, pick up on store, all those different kind of models. So we've done a lot of work there. But we go further. So we also go into industries like museums. We work with top 2 museums in the UK, helping them with their ticketing, their digital ticketing, whereas before they were tearing paper tickets, right? So huge, big advances there. And also airports too, who have massive challenges with knowing who their customers even are.
2 examples that come to mind. We worked with a US department store, and they challenged us to come up with a 5-year omni-channel strategy. And we said, who even thinks 5 years ahead in this day and age, right? So, but still, let's give them a long-term strategy that has a short, medium, and a long-term outlook. And when we worked with them, we had to think about all those different parts of the organization and all the different functions and all of the different systems. So merchandising, how are you, what are you selling and how are you romancing it? Marketing, how are you building demand for your product and your experience, and how are you building loyalty? Because lifetime value of a customer is more valuable. What's the customer experience, regardless of what device, what channel, however they interact with your brand? What technologies are behind those different experiences? What are the operations and all the logistics that have to happen? Often operations are the moment of truth. You open up that box when you get it. Did it come on time? Does it look good? That's your moment of truth. When you're in the store, that's your moment of truth. When you call customer service, that's your moment of truth. And then who are the people behind it that you need, and what's the structure and the talent, and have you set them up to succeed in order to accomplish all of these things? And then lastly is sort of you're in it to make money, so what's the budget, what's the P&L look like? And so you have to take these different components and figure out how are they going to work together. So in this case, this is a large scale kind of a strategy project. But then in another client where it is a national brand, one of the largest brands in the US, one of the to-dos was, hey, look at this tiny part of our process. Let's look at the checkout on our website, just the checkout. So we looked at this process and really picked it apart. We brought customers in. We did eye tracking studies. We did focus groups. We did surveys. Of course, we looked at the site and we looked at the analytics. And this retailer all of them have a long list of things that they want to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's always long.
Yep.
The question is prioritization. How are you going to prioritize that, the limited staff and the limited dollars? So so we had to prioritize this list. So they made 3 changes, just 3 changes. And in 3 months, that was a $60 million change. Wow. So you can imagine this is of course, they're doing more than $1.5 billion turnover online. But you make 3 changes and you can get that kind of return. That's worth your effort.
Wow. How many things were on that list?
We kind of cheated and grouped a couple of things together, but it's about 20 things, and it mattered. Wow. Whether it mattered what was number 4 versus number 3, because they said we can only get 3 things done this year.
Well, you can imagine we have customers that process millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars to the systems that we are setting up for them. So you can imagine small changes can have huge impacts. It's just mind blowing how far they can go with improving some little things in how they do things, and then you can have a huge ROI, both from a point of view of actually selling more, but also in what they are selling, because it's not always about selling more, but it's also about selling the right type of stuff. And generally the idea nowadays, especially in fashion and apparel, is to try to have a good match between what you're selling and what the customers actually want. So you manufacture the stuff that actually the customers want. And if the systems are properly aligned and you are actually manufacturing what the customers want, then you don't have to discount to 90% in order for you to sell the stuff, because customers see value in what you are producing. And if customers see values, they pay full price and you make good margins and you don't go bankrupt. So, you know, these are the benefits of actually looking at it and either scaling it up or looking at it on what you are actually selling and how you are actually doing it in order to make sure that your business at the end of the day, it's a healthy business and you don't kill your margins.
A good example of what Gerry's talking about is as we look into the merchant's organization, right? From the time that they decide, oh, here's a selection or here's some product, the process to get it to the store or to the website and to the customer has many steps, many departments that it touches. And so we see digital transformation happening all the way back at the early part. Instead of sending a sample, right? Let's do it digitally, right? Instead of sending, or when I'm designing the product, if I want to see this, this jacket with different color lapels or different buttons or different, different liner, then instead of actually having to do that at the factory, I can do this in 3D. I can do this digitally, and then I can send those different sheets to the buyers and to find out, to get feedback. And they can even send it on to customer groups to find out feedback from the customer right away. So we keep shortening the process, but yet including more people. That's transformation.
Yeah, that's definitely transformation.
Interesting. And Gerry, there's a line you said, small changes could have big impacts. And one small change that Apple decided to do not too long ago was to give users the ability to turn off tracking on their phones, essentially stopping D2C companies' ability to find more customers that have like-minded interests. How does OSF work around something like that? Because that seems like something that could impact these companies in big ways. I mean, not everyone has an iPhone. I mean, people have Android phones, but it's just a matter of time before a lot of these companies lock down opportunities for D2C companies to interact with their customers.
Well, this is a wider subject, actually, because you've got Apple that are turning off. Yes, they turned off that tracking, but you've got Google that are getting rid of third-party cookies, right? That happens in the next year. So and not less than a year ago, Google already, various other browsers introduced some restrictions around that. And a lot of people's analytics data just dropped off a cliff. They over 50% of what they knew, they started not to know. And what's really interesting about that is that we have become a very data-driven world because data has become plentiful, especially in terms of tracking customers. But as a result, a lot of brands have lost their way in terms of actually why do they exist, right? What's their purpose? Why do they exist there for the customer? They've gone so data-driven that they're making decisions purely on the data instead of actually thinking about who they are as customers. As brands, right? What's their purpose of being there? Because brands that have very solid and strong purposes don't have to rely as much on data as other brands do. I mean, Apple's a good example, right? Yes, they're probably quite data driven, but they design great products that people still want to buy. In the UK, there's a brand called Fat Face. It's one of my favorite examples because they never, on like Black Friday and those sale periods, they never discount. People expect them to, and they see it in their purchase history, that people are waiting to buy, waiting for a sale, never happens. And then on about the 23rd of December, they get an enormous rush of orders for Christmas because they actually still want to buy the brand, right? Because they know why they're there, producing quality goods. So I think in my view, there's a balance between, yes, they're losing data, but maybe this will be a catalyst to actually be better at what they do.
Overall, this entire thinking about how you capture data, I never been a fan of relying on some kind of automatic capturing of data, tracking and all that. I've been always a huge fan of opt-in. and actually go after the use cases where the people and customers and employees actually opt in instead of just by default tracking them. And I think there are many ways to do that. And we never really pushed this idea forward. We never really worked with customers that had to reply on tracking their customers, tracking their employees. It's just not the right way to do it. And especially we had to anyways comply with so many data rules across the globe. It's just not the right way to do it. So opt-in is the right way to go, and making sure that you can gather information, gather data in a way that is really respectful to the customer, respectful to the employee, respectful to the people in general. And there are many ways that you can do it. And actually, when you're looking at the data, many people actually don't mind to do it. If they are asked, yeah, sure, why not? I don't mind it. But they are asked. There is an opt-in. There is a different way of approaching.
There's got to be a return on utility as well. So if I'm giving my data, I want there to be a reason. If you're going to track my location, why are you going to do that? Is that helpful to me actually, or not helpful? So if a grocery app wants to track my location, I'm not sure about that, because actually most of my groceries just go to my house. Why do you need to know where I am at all times? I don't get that. I'm quite private in many ways to do with data anyway. Maybe not in talking, but in data. And so there's got to be a return on utility. Why do you actually want that?
If you can convince me that the way you are using my data will return some value to me, like, for example, keeping the history of all the great places I've seen in the past and I want to remember them and everything, okay, use my data because I want to know what I did last week and I actually enjoyed it. I want to be able to go back to that. Or many other like location mindset. While you are doing your shopping and you are actually going to the same shop, or for me, I always want to know where is the closest Starbucks. So I want that location to be enabled so that I can actually get it in the most time effective way and get my latte in the morning, get out. And so there is, if they can convince me that there is a utility, there is a value in what they are doing, and I know what they are doing with my data, I don't think that it's an issue with that. But it has to be an opt-in. It has to be a value-based conversation, and it's totally doable. I don't think that for us, at least, the way we are thinking and the way we are structuring our business, that is a non-issue.
Perfect example of digital transformation in Starbucks, though, as well, right?
Yeah.
So now the ability to use the app to order your coffee, to pick it up faster instead of waiting in some kind of queue or whatever, that's digital transformation in a can, right? That's just a pure example.
I love the positivity, because I was always feeling that a lot of these D2C companies were feeling like this is the death knell of them. Like, we are out of business because all of a sudden we can't capture this data. But you're saying that it's just like we've been discussing during this conversation. It's the adapt or die. You've got to adapt to the new way of doing things, or you're just not going to survive.
If you developed your entire business based on one thing only and capturing data from consumers without asking them, well, maybe you deserve to die. I mean, what? Yeah. I don't know. Hey, your business maybe is not that good. That's not solid.
Yeah, a great example of that is, if you guys recall, back when Facebook was blowing up, a lot of media companies were building up their subscriber base and download base based on people consuming content on Facebook. And then one day, Facebook was like, we're going to change the algorithm. And a lot of these media companies went out of business because all of a sudden they weren't getting any reach. So it's a great point, Gerry. It's like, if you're building your business on just one sort of outlet, you're probably not going to make it.
That is actually a different conversation, in my opinion. Like, if you are a platform and you invite 10,000 partners to develop and use your platform, and you give them a certain environment, and then from one day to another, you change the environment, what kind of a partnership is that? Like, you need to be predictable. You need to, these people come to your environment to develop a business, to create an app, to create a business model based on some assumptions that you are giving them. You need to be consistent. You need to be predictable, because they are also making a business around it. So if you're not predictable and from one day to another, you just change totally the the setup.
I agree with that. At the same time, they don't seem to care. Apple's the same, right? They're very happy to just cut things off and make new rules. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be the behavior should be moved to a more fair behavior towards these, let's say, smaller players that are actually acting in their environment. You know, like it's overall as an idea, really building stuff on the idea that you will have access to data that you don't have actual permission is not right.
Well, let's talk about the future of tech as we wrap this up. The old meme, the Ferris Bueller line, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Just this past week, as of we're recording, Apple announced that they were no longer making iPods. And I think all of us are old enough to remember buying our first iPod 20 years ago. Things are moving really fast in tech. Now we're hearing a lot of 3.0, metaverse, opening up to the floor here. What do you guys see the future of tech looking like and how OSF plays a role in it?
What's an iPod?
Well, I was about to say exactly the same thing, right? I was sitting here going, I bet no one involved in this, you, me, these guys behind the camera, I bet none of them own an iPod because they use their phones, right? They use their phones. I think we see a lot in terms of the future of tech. I think, is it speeding up? I mean, we keep saying that as a kind of thing, right? The pace of change is speeding up. And I think it is and it isn't, in my view. If you look back, some of the kind of, let's take, I don't know, aircraft as an example. Aircraft haven't changed fundamentally for like 30 years, right? We haven't actually had that much innovation in airline transport for a long time. The thing that they're focusing on is efficiency and fuel and things of this nature. But the actual experience fundamentally not really changed, right, of actually boarding an aircraft. And I think there's lots of areas that are like that. We had the Industrial Revolution where they're a huge step forward in physical things. I see a lot of incremental change now, but the pace of that incremental change is fast. So even if you look at headphones as a really weird example, right, we used to have wired only headphones. And they were huge, right? They were heavy. Their sound quality wasn't that good. And now through a lot of incremental change, you get to AirPods, right? Tiny little things with batteries in that connect to your phone that you can just walk around and charge them in a case. That is a lot of incremental change that's added up to a big amount of utility. And I think we're going to see more of that. Let's mention drones. People have been going on about drones forever, right? But they're starting to drop stuff off, right? In various places around the world, especially where legislation's a bit loose on flying aircraft. They're dropping stuff off and delivering stuff. But that to me is incremental change. It's not a human doing it, it's a person doing it. In delivery warehouses, robots are doing so much more now of the picking and the packing and all that kind of stuff. Again, more incremental change. So for me, the future of tech is, for us, is trying to keep up with all of that incremental change across the board so that we can advise our customers.
I think I'd agree that the change is happening in bite sizes.
Yep.
And around the industry, right? If you think about going to the grocery store and looking for Pringles, potato chips now, it's the long tail, right? There's like 30 different flavors of Pringles, and I just can't believe that the world needs 30 flavors of Pringles. But apparently they do, because it's the long tail. Mm-hmm. So I think the same thing is happening in innovation, where it's going to happen more frequently, faster, in a lot of different pockets. But why is this good? Because it's choices. It's choices around what area do I want to innovate in? And in that particular area, I've got 10 choices now. And I don't have to think about the entire, I could switch this knob. I could switch this knob. I don't have to really think about the whole thing. I should think about my whole company, my whole division, my whole, value proposition. But back to what you said before, it doesn't have to be the large chunk thing change. You have to think big, but I can start now. I don't have to wait for this huge event to happen. I can just start playing with these different things. Remember what I said before about experimentation, planning to fail a little bit, and just keep moving along while having this big vision.
You have this entire innovation and transformation. The way I'm looking at it is you have innovation happening incrementally and then suddenly. It's like a sudden, huge disruption. Think of you, Rob, you mentioned Tesla earlier. Mm-hmm. Like, why did that happen actually? Is because there has been a lot of incremental change in batteries. There has been a lot of incremental change in software and the way the cars can be automated with software, and which we didn't have 20 years ago. And all of these incremental changes have made all of these things affordable, and you could integrate them in new ways that 20 years ago were not possible, or not even 5 years ago were no longer possible. Also, from a point of view of manufacturing, there have been innovation in robotics and all that that actually enabled this entire idea of an electric car. And what happened when Elon Musk actually came out with that is that he kind of brought all of this incremental to that abrupt and sudden disruption. Like, he put it all together and said, yeah, well, today everything is possible. And nobody actually checked on, hey, all of this incremental change actually made this really possible and make that happen. And that's when it happened. And for us, I believe that all of these changes that happen in the industry is going to be about making sure that these systems are integrated, that you have the proper information in order to enable real personalization, the real knowledge about what's happening with your consumer, what's happening with your business, what's happening with your market. This is the kind of thing that is going to really make the future move forward in our space. And once you master this, when a metaverse comes, when virtual reality comes or augmented reality comes, you will be able to just use it, to just plug it in and then go into a disruption.
And any of these kind of technologies, they are so incremental that you have a window of change, right? It's not, a lot of people get worried with the future of tech that I need to spot that trend, because if I miss it, I'm going to lose out and my business is going to fail. But actually, the big trends that actually make the biggest impact, there's a window of change. You can see it coming, right? You can see the early disruptors actually starting to do it. You can see that people are starting to adopt it, but it's not mainstream. You can prepare. You can see.
You can still be on the second gen.
Yeah. You can be the second market. You can, because
Apple wasn't the first smartphone. No? Facebook wasn't the first social network. No. And I have tons of examples. And Tesla wasn't the first electric car.
So I just find it very interesting that for us, it's a constant watching brief and making the links between the different things, and just briefing our customers continually, basically, so that they know what's coming. And then they've got to decide how quick they want to move. The only question with the future of tech is whether, when we brief them on the future, are they actually in the present? We've got to get them there first sometimes, right? Before we get to the future. So that's probably the first stage.
Well, this has been a great chat. Bernardine Wu, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
And Rob Smith, not so bad. I wasn't expecting so much out of you in this conversation. Thank you very much.
Well, I bring the thunder. Not gonna say.
Thank you for having us, Gerry.
Thank you very much.
This has been The Great Digital Transformation with Gerard Szatvanyi. To participate in the conversation, go to gerardzatvanyi.com. The Great Digital Transformation is a production of Forbes Books.